What if the 1800s were far more technologically daring than we've been led to believe? Long before modern power grids and wireless networks, a handful of radical inventors erected strange towers, launched metallic balloons, and stretched miles of copper wire into the sky, claiming they could draw electricity directly from the atmosphere. Were these men brilliant visionaries tapping into a forgotten force of nature, or were they chasing an illusion born from incomplete science? Some believe their work hints at a suppressed energy revolution. Others argue the truth is more grounded, but no less fascinating. The real story challenges both skepticism and conspiracy alike. Architecture of a lost empire. Look closely at the impossible grandeur of Gilded Age architecture. Observe the massive domes, the towering copper spires, and the vast geometric star forts scattered across the globe. Consider for a moment the possibility that these structures were never originally designed as mere buildings, but rather operated as highly advanced machines. This staggering premise sits at the core of the Tartarian Empire mythos, a narrative proposing that a globally connected, technologically superior civilization once thrived before being deliberately erased from history. According to this theory, this society utilized monumental architecture as sophisticated stations for harvesting atmospheric energy from the ether. Advocates of this idea assert that iconic marvels, including the original New York Penn Station and the Singer Building, were not built by the architects officially credited with their construction. Instead, these massive edifices were supposedly found and repurposed as etheric energy hubs by a much later society. The supposed mechanism of this grand erasure is an event colloquially known as the Mud Flood. This catastrophe is described as a localized or perhaps global disaster that buried the lower levels of Tartarian infrastructure under meters of earth. When you walk through modern cities and see half-buried basement windows or structural light wells cut into the pavement, adherents of this theory view these architectural features as undeniable physical proof of the mud flood. They argue these anomalies represent a deliberate campaign of damnatio memoriae, a systematic destruction of a sovereign and highly advanced empire to hide the truth of our past. Yet, the historical reality of Tartary reveals a far more terrestrial and deeply fascinating origin. Between the 13th and 19th centuries, Western European cartographers possessed very little concrete knowledge of the vast expanses of Central and Northern Asia. They employed the label Tartary as a convenient blanket term covering enormous swaths of Siberia, Manchuria, and the Eurasian steppes. It was simply a placeholder on a map for the vast unknown. As geographical awareness expanded through the rigorous voyages of 19th-century explorers like Alexander von Humboldt, the blank spaces on the maps were finally filled. The toponym naturally faded from use, replaced by far more specific and accurate regional designations. The sudden disappearance of Tartary from modern globes was not the result of a malicious cover-up or a world-ending flood, but rather the inevitable triumph of scientific exploration over cartographic ignorance. This completely simple, but incredibly significant historical shift in basic labeling continues to stubbornly fuel a profound modern misunderstanding of historical architectural achievements and the slow, fascinating evolution of human geography. Science of the primordial fluid. Step away from those internet conspiracies and consider the actual, utterly wild reality of 19th century science. Imagine a world where electricity was not yet a household utility, but was instead viewed as a primordial, almost magical fluid permeating the entire cosmos. This was an era defined by electrical romanticism, a period of breathtaking scientific awakening initially triggered by Benjamin Franklin and his infamous kite experiment in 1752. That singular, daring event fundamentally changed human understanding, proving conclusively that the atmosphere itself held a vast, invisible electrical charge. This startling revelation eventually led to the profound discovery of the potential gradient. Early researchers realized that a massive voltage difference exists between the surface of the Earth and the upper layers of the atmosphere. The ground beneath our very feet is negatively charged, while the distant ionosphere holds a powerful positive charge. The entire planet effectively functions as an impossibly massive spherical capacitor, storing colossal amounts of ambient energy in the sky directly above us. The mechanism driving this planetary battery is the global atmospheric electrical circuit, a continuous, dynamic movement of invisible charge carriers between the heavens and the Earth. This majestic natural engine is constantly maintained by approximately 40,000 ferocious thunderstorms rolling across the globe every single day. These massive weather systems act collectively like a giant generator, producing roughly 100 intense lightning strikes every single second. This relentless bombardment fiercely pumps energy upward, ultimately charging the electrosphere to a staggering 400,000 volts relative to the surface. Even on completely clear days, miles away from any visible storm clouds, a downward-flowing electric field continuously drives positive charges toward the ground. The sheer magnitude of this unseen field at sea level sits constantly between 100 and 120 volts for every single meter of elevation. Furthermore, this ambient electrical current is not static. It breathes and fluctuates, strictly following a precise, global daily pulsation, officially known as the Carnegie curve. The very atmosphere of our planet essentially beats with an invisible electrical heartbeat, reaching a natural crescendo every evening and settling into a quiet, steady rhythm by early morning, providing the deeply profound theoretical foundation for countless truly ambitious inventors worldwide. The Thunder and Lightning Man. You would think he had completely lost his mind. Imagine a remarkably wealthy eccentric dedicating his life to stringing miles of highly conductive wire through the remote English woods for the sole purpose of catching the sky on fire. This was the exact reality of Andrew Cross, who lived from 1784 to 1855. Residing at his expansive family estate of Fine Court in the Quantock Hills of Somerset, Cross quickly earned the local reputation as the Thunder and Lightning Man. By the 1830s, he had constructed an immense, almost unbelievable apparatus designed to draw raw voltage directly from the atmosphere. He methodically threaded 3,000 feet of copper wire through the surrounding forest canopy, utilizing specially crafted glass insulators on the tree branches to completely prevent grounding. This massive aerial network acted as an atmospheric funnel, channeling immense amounts of ambient voltage directly into his laboratory, a converted space he called his philosophical room, which was densely packed with an array of Leyden jars. During heavy storms, the sheer violence of the electrical output was utterly terrifying. The massive atmospheric batteries he built could be charged and discharged 20 times a minute, producing brilliant flowing streams of fire alongside deafening sparks that echoed with the concussive force of cannon fire. Yet, while his atmospheric wires were his most highly visible achievement, his most controversial legacy stemmed from a bizarre 1836 experiment. Cross attempted to grow artificial crystals by continuously dripping an electrified chemical solution of potassium silicate and hydrochloric acid over a highly porous piece of stone retrieved from Mount Vesuvius. After 28 days of continuous electrification, tiny insects of the genus Acarus seemingly began to grow directly out of the electrified stone, eventually detaching to move freely about the laboratory. The public reaction was absolutely explosive. Cross was viciously accused of attempting to play God and received numerous, highly credible death threats from an outraged public who labeled him a reviler of holy religion. This deeply unsettling accidental experiment eventually cemented his lasting role in history, ultimately serving as the definitive real-world inspiration and core scientific archetype for the author, Mary Shelley, and her remarkably legendary Gothic tale of Frankenstein. The Dentist Who Beat Marconi. While Andrew Cross was playing God in the mud with his electrified rocks, an unassuming American dentist was quietly beating Guglielmo Marconi to the punch by decades. Using nothing more than a pair of simple kites and some copper. His name was Malin Loomis, and instead of trying to catch lightning, he looked toward the sky to forge the future of human communication. In October of 1866, Loomis hiked into the rugged Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia to conduct an incredibly audacious experiment. He launched 2 large kites from the distant summits of Bear's Den Mountain and Oventop Mountain, which sat separated by a vast expanse of 14 to 18 miles. Each kite was specially rigged with a 15-inch square of pure copper gauze attached to its underside, acting as an atmospheric collector. These collectors were securely tethered to the ground using 600 feet of highly conductive copper wire. Loomis theorized that the atmosphere above the Earth was strictly divided into discrete, naturally occurring voltage layers. He firmly believed that if he could physically tap into the exact same electrical layer at 2 completely different geographical locations, he could establish an invisible circuit using the natural electricity of the air. To test this, he connected the grounded end of his copper tethers to a highly sensitive scientific instrument known as a galvanometer. When Loomis selectively grounded the wire connection at his primary station, he successfully disturbed the delicate electrical equilibrium of the atmosphere. Instantly, across miles of empty mountain air, the needle on the galvanometer at the second station sharply deflected. He had achieved the first confirmed demonstration of wireless aerial communication. In 1872, his monumental achievement was officially recognized when he secured United States patent number 129971 for wireless telegraphy. The United States Congress even officially incorporated the Loomis Aerial Telegraph Company the following year. Yet, this remarkable vision was ultimately destroyed not by scientific failure, but by the devastating global economic collapse known as the Panic of 1873. His groundbreaking company completely dissolved, leaving the incredible early legacy of the true father of wireless communication buried deep within the forgotten archives of human history. The industrial power of aerostats. By the 1920s, brilliant engineers were no longer merely playing with harmless sparks or sending simple signals across mountain ranges. They were actively attempting to literally power the rapidly expanding industrial revolution directly from the very zenith of the sky itself. Leading this incredible charge was an Estonian engineer named Hermann Plausen, the ambitious director of the Fischer-Tropsch laboratories in Hamburg. In 1925, Plausen secured United States patent number 1540998 for an incredibly sophisticated system of atmospheric conversion. Moving far beyond primitive kites, Plausen designed massive, high-altitude aerostats. These giant balloons were carefully constructed from incredibly thin aluminum leaf and filled with highly buoyant helium. To absolutely maximize the collection of ambient static electricity, he proposed completely covering the outer surface of these metallic balloons with thousands of electrolytically sharpened pins. In a brilliant yet highly dangerous twist, these tiny metal pins were meticulously amalgamated with zinc and purposefully treated with radioactive radium salts, specifically chosen to aggressively ionize the immediately surrounding air and drastically lower the natural electrical resistance. The astonishing results Plausen officially reported from his working prototypes bordered on the unbelievable. He documented that a single aluminum balloon flying at a height of just 300 yards reliably pulled a steady current of 1.8 amps at 400 volts. This continuous stream translated to a staggering yield of 17.25 kilowatt-hours per day. Even more remarkably, by tethering just 2 balloons together in a dual configuration, he claimed to successfully generate a massive 81.5 kilowatt-hours over a standard 24-hour period. Armed with this seemingly limitless and wildly abundant source of invisible atmospheric energy, the ambitious Plausen confidently envisioned a rapidly and profoundly transformed industrial future. He fiercely advocated for the immediate construction of massive, 1,000-foot-tall insulated towers strategically dotting the modern landscape to anchor his radioactive aerial fleet, aiming to completely replace traditional water power with the boundless, invisible electricity raining down from the high clouds. The global wireless power system. Enter the brilliant architect of the modern world. He is the enigmatic man, standing at the absolute dead center of the entire energy tower mythos, a relentless visionary who quite literally wanted to strike the earth and ring it exactly like a massive bell. Before attempting to conquer the globe, Nikola Tesla retreated to the high altitude and frequent lightning storms of Colorado Springs in 1899. There, he meticulously constructed the magnifying transmitter, an incredibly powerful device specifically designed to physically test the natural conductivity of the planetary crust. He pushed millions of extremely high voltage volts deep into the solid ground, deliberately attempting to create artificial standing waves that could theoretically be tapped by a remote receiver situated absolutely anywhere on the face of the planet. This radical concept culminated in the construction of the legendary Wardenclyffe Tower between 1901 and 1905 in Shoreham, New York. Backed by the immense wealth of financier J.P. Morgan and designed by the renowned architect Stanford White, this magnificent structure was intended to be the very first node in a vast global network of wireless plants. The physical structural specifications of the completed facility remain absolutely staggering. The main wooden tower stood exactly 187 feet tall, crowned by a massive 55-ton hemispherical steel dome measuring 68 feet straight across. Beneath the surface, an extensive, highly secretive network of heavy iron rods and large copper plates extended exactly 120 feet deep into the bedrock, specifically engineered to physically grip the earth and forcefully facilitate immense electrical resonance. It is right here that the modern internet conspiracy utterly fails and demands a crucial, highly argumentative correction. Tesla was absolutely never attempting to harvest ambient free energy from the static charge of the sky. His primary, explicitly stated vision was the reliable wireless transmission of artificially generated power from massive central coal and hydroelectric stations. He wanted to use the planet as a conductive wire, definitely not as a magical battery. Unfortunately, this wildly ambitious dream of a completely wireless world terrifyingly threatened the firmly established financial order. Realizing that globally broadcasted electrical power could never be efficiently metered or easily monetized, J.P. Morgan ruthlessly withdrew all of his remaining financial support. The grand project immediately stalled, completely abandoned to the harsh coastal elements, until the magnificent tower was ultimately dynamited and sold for mere scrap metal in 1917, marking the bitter end of a profoundly lost technological future. The brutal math of ether. We already possess the boundless ambition, the detailed historical patents, and the towering steel structures of the 19th century. Yet, the highly distinct absence of modern cities pulling free electricity out of thin air today forces a necessary and brutal examination of the underlying mathematical reality. The fundamental concept of static atmospheric harvesting suffers a completely lethal physical blow the moment you analyze the actual numbers. The ambient voltage of the atmosphere is undeniably impressive, measuring a constant 100 volts for every single meter of elevation near the surface. The fatal scientific flaw lies within the available current density, which is agonizingly low. It sits at a nearly microscopic 2 picoamperes per square meter in fair weather. To properly visualize this severe limitation, imagine constructing a massive, highly advanced atmospheric collector covering an entire square kilometer of open land. Even under absolutely perfect and pristine environmental conditions, that colossal, sprawling structure would only manage to generate a pathetic 2 milliamperes of usable electrical current. The ultimate capacity limit of the sky is shockingly finite. The entire global atmospheric electrical circuit, actively powered by thousands of daily thunderstorms, holds a maximum continuous current of only 1,000 to 1,800 amperes. When you calculate the total power continuously circulating through the electrical heart of our planet at any given moment, it maxes out at roughly 1 gigawatt of total energy. This specific metric provides a remarkably humbling perspective when placed next to modern human consumption and industrial requirements. A single modern nuclear power reactor routinely produces that exact same 1 gigawatt of electrical power, all on its own on a daily basis. The inescapable conclusion of this rigid physics equation completely shatters the grand myth of an unlimited atmospheric utopia. Even if humanity somehow possessed the impossible technological capability to capture 100% of the ambient electrical energy circulating through the entire atmosphere of the planet simultaneously, it would barely provide enough total juice to run a single, heavily populated, medium-sized modern city. The visionary inventors of the 1800s were absolutely correct that the sky is fundamentally electric, but they tragically lacked the advanced scientific instruments required to realize the vast ocean of invisible energy was essentially a shallow puddle. Economics of the atmospheric ether. It is definitely not a shadowy conspiracy holding this technology back from the modern world. It is the completely unforgiving laws of thermodynamics and cold, brutal economics. When evaluating the feasibility of harvesting old-world energy against modern renewable sources, the data reveals a completely staggering disparity in basic power density. The potential energy available from the atmospheric electric field is pathetically small, sitting at roughly 6 times 10 to the -7th power watts per square meter. Compare that incredibly microscopic figure directly to modern wind energy, which easily generates 2 to 5 watts per square meter, or solar photovoltaic panels, which reliably produce an absolutely massive 100 to 200 watts for that exact same square meter of open space. To truly grasp how utterly absurd this massive gap is, look at real-world solar potential today. Comprehensive urban studies conclusively show that covering available roof space in a region like Ludwigsburg, Germany, could successfully cover 77% of their total electricity demand. In Cuenca, Ecuador, utilizing standard roof-mounted solar could actually produce 5.5 times the actual energy demand of the entire city. In stark, horrifying contrast, to successfully generate that exact same amount of power using atmospheric electricity, engineers would be forced to construct atmospheric collectors spanning a geographical area significantly larger than the entire surface area of the Earth itself. Furthermore, you face a catastrophic scaling problem. The magnificent experiments of the past were certainly successful on a tiny prototype scale, generating impressive lightning sparks or lighting small motors. However, the completely exorbitant financial cost of erecting 1,000-foot insulated towers or deploying massive fleets of tethered metallic balloons absolutely does not scale with the microscopic slivers of energy actually captured. Then you inevitably encounter the ultimate technological nightmare of energy storage. Atmospheric electricity is violently intermittent, peaking aggressively during raging thunderstorms, but dropping to effectively useless levels during vast stretches of calm, fair weather. This wildly unpredictable dynamic creates a massive, insurmountable storage problem that primitive 19th-century battery technology, consisting primarily of highly inefficient lead-acid arrays and extremely fragile Leyden jars, absolutely could not resolve, permanently locking this incredibly magnificent but utterly flawed dream forever in the romanticized pages of history. The QAnon of modern architecture. Since the unforgiving laws of physics render free atmospheric electricity an absolute impossibility, the sudden internet obsession with a lost Tartarian empire demands a much deeper psychological explanation. The movement thrives completely apart from any genuine understanding of electrodynamics, existing instead as a profound expression of collective cultural mourning. Sociologists and architectural historians increasingly define this sweeping phenomenon as the QAnon of architecture. At its absolute core, this sprawling narrative represents a powerful emotional reaction against the perceived aesthetic sterility of contemporary modernism. Adherents look at the beautiful, highly ornate buildings of the past and feel a deep sense of loss. They choose to believe these monumental structures were built by a technologically superior global civilization rather than accepting the complex economic shifts that ultimately stripped modern skylines of their intricate beauty. This deeply ingrained distrust of established historical timelines relies heavily on a fundamental misunderstanding of early technology. Believers frequently point to eerie, completely deserted city streets in early 19th century photographs as undeniable visual proof of a post-mud flood ghost town. The actual reality is wonderfully mundane and fascinating. Early cameras required incredibly long exposure times to capture any usable image at all. Fast-moving subjects, like trotting horses and bustling pedestrians, simply vanished from the incredibly slow photographic plates. This limitation left behind accidental illusions of completely empty urban landscapes. This exact same pattern of romantic misinterpretation aggressively targets the magnificent world expositions of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Grand events, specifically like the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition, featured massive, impossibly ornate cities that seemingly rivaled ancient Rome. To the modern conspiracy theorist, the deliberate demolition of these spectacular sites serves as a malicious act intended to destroy solid ancient marble capitals and hide a glorious past. The historical truth proves these breathtaking structures were entirely temporary visual illusions. They were constructed rapidly using staff, a highly fragile mixture of plaster and hemp fibers spread tightly over simple wooden frames. They were never meant to stand forever, serving instead as beautiful, fleeting monuments to pure human imagination. A profound, lost future. We land the narrative right here. The documented historical truth is vastly more fascinating than the popular internet fiction of a suppressed global empire. These ambitious 19th century scientists did not actually fail in their grand pursuits. They simply discovered the foundational architecture of the modern world. The fascinating technical evolution from Andrew Cross and Hermann Plausen, who relied entirely on passive electrostatic collection to pull tiny amounts of ambient charge from the sky, eventually culminated in the profound genius of Nikola Tesla. Tesla brilliantly reversed the entire paradigm, moving away from simple collection toward complex resonant conversion and global transmission. The magnificent sky towers of the 1800s exist today not as ancient, suppressed energy harvesters, but as the literal, direct ancestors of every single piece of modern telecommunications infrastructure. The ambitious aerial circuits of Mahlon Loomis and the towering steel frames of Wardenclyffe directly informed the rapid development of modern radio masts, radar installations, and orbiting satellite dishes. The pervasive modern legend of Tartaria, while completely factually incorrect and physically impossible, serves a deeply important psychological purpose. It acts as a powerful modern myth built entirely on a profound collective awe for the sheer, unbelievable scale of 19th century human engineering. It points back to a beautifully romantic period in human history when brilliant scientists genuinely believed they could physically connect human machinery directly to the vast wheelwork of nature itself. In the final, rigorous analysis of these incredible historical experiments, the most potent energy successfully harvested from the turbulent atmosphere was definitely not electricity. The true energy they captured was unbridled human inspiration. That specific, undeniable inspiration ultimately fueled the incredibly rapid technological evolution that continuously defines and powers our entire modern age today, proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that their magnificent and highly monumental towers were absolutely never actually intended to be static monuments to a definitively lost architectural past, but incredibly prophetic blueprints for our profoundly connected future.